And then for a split second, I had this almost embodied experience of nothingness, of life being finite and really stopping, there being nothing.
At 7?
At 7.
Wow.
And it really shook me. It was a very scary experience. But I think ever since, I'm not sure if I had been the same if I hadn't experienced that. Perhaps I would have been. Mm-hmm. But I think it distinctly shaped my idea of like, okay, I have one life to live and I need to live everything within that single life.
Welcome to Exceptionals, the podcast. A leadership podcast about the origin stories of exceptional leaders and their identity intelligence. A superpower everybody has, but nobody measures. Until now. Today, we're speaking to Jacqueline van den Ende. She's the co-founder and CEO of Carbon Equity, a fintech platform that channels retail capital into some of the world's most promising climate technology solutions. Jacqueline is passionate and successful at building companies from scratch and building high-performing teams around ambitious missions. Welcome, Jacqueline. I'm so glad to have you here. Normally, when you're invited to podcasts like this, you're invited to talk about your company, Carbon Equity. But today, Pim and I invited you to talk about something very different, your origin story and the results of your identity intelligence assessment. This assessment gives you insight into how you developed your leadership strengths. And if you're listening to this podcast, you can visit weareexceptionals.com and discover your own origin story and map your identity intelligence. Are you an outsider identity? Do you have a patchwork identity? Or an underdog or an unseen? You can figure it out yourself and map where your identity advantage comes from. Jacqueline, your origin story reveals in a beautiful way how intuition played a very important role in developing your business and how you developed as an entrepreneur. But before we dive into that, Pim.
So before every episode, we ask our guests, which questions should we ask you to truly get to know you? And you told us that we should ask you about what has guided you in your life choices. So we're very curious. What has guided you?
I think I've been guided by adventure seeking.
Yes.
I have a lot of love for life and kind of want to really maximize life and experience everything there is. I sort of have an ambition to live 1,000 lives in one.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a few of those thousands?
Well, adventures as an entrepreneur, adventures as an investor, living all around the world in many different places. So I think I've always been shaped a little bit by wanting to experience new worlds, wanting to experience new places, and building new companies as well as part of it.
Can you remember one of those first adventures you sought?
Well, I think maybe there was one experience that quite sort of specifically shaped my experience, perhaps. When I was 7, my grandfather died. And just before he died, he said he was afraid to die. Mm. And I wondered why, because I think at that point I still believed in heaven. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I sort of dove into that thought of like, why is he afraid to die? And started thinking about death. And then for a split second, I had this almost embodied experience of nothingness, of life being finite and really stopping and there being nothing.
At 7?
At 7.
Wow.
And and it really shook me. It was a very scary experience. But I think ever since, I'm not sure if I had been the same if I hadn't experienced that. Perhaps I would have been. Mm-hmm. But I think it distinctly shaped my idea of like, okay, I have one life to live and I need to live everything within that single life.
Yes.
And
you want to max life out.
Really, exactly. So I remember sitting in a car as a child on holidays and seeing a little castle on a hill and thinking, one day I want to live there. Or seeing a mountain and thinking, one day I want to climb that mountain. And so that maximizing life is being a bit of a theme. When I was in high school, I think I had one of the biggest disappointments of my life. I applied to United World Colleges. It's a really cool initiative of schools around the world where international students come together and they study together, but also do a lot of voluntary work. And I would have been a perfect match to this United World Colleges, in my opinion.
Why?
Well, because I was socially engaged. I had an international background. I cared about doing voluntary work. And just generally, I think it would have fit my personality very well. But I did not do the interview very well, and I got rejected. And that was the first time I sort of almost got like hit with a baseball bat.
I cannot do everything that I want to do.
Yes, and it was just, I felt like incredibly defeated. It was the first time in my life that something really that I really wanted did not work out. But then after I sort of recovered from that shock, I sort of pledged to myself, okay, I don't need United World Colleges to be successful. I'm going to do everything I possibly can. I'm going to say yes to everything. So again, maximizing. In my high school, I was president of the school newspaper. I was part of the Model United Nations. I was in the gemeenteraad in the city council of Madurodam.
But these are very specific ways to max out your life, right? They're very socially engaged.
Yeah.
And about the world and the environment and wanted to make a better place.
Well, initially not so much yet, but soon they were. And I think an experience that has shaped my journey perhaps is growing up very internationally. Yeah. So my dad was a shell engineer, my mom a lawyer. And so from the age of 1, I lived abroad in Australia, first 5 years in Australia. And then we moved to Syria. In Damascus. And then afterwards, we came to the Netherlands, where I did high school in Wassenaar, of all places. And I think that shaped my worldview, being much more international and open and having an understanding of how realities differ a lot. And that, I think, has shaped a bit of my social engagement.
How did that shape your identity, being you, Jacqueline, one in a totally different country, environment, and then years later again and again? What did you, looking back, learn from that? What kind of instincts did you develop?
I think that really shaped my identity a lot. Because, well, for me, living abroad was my default. So that's how I grew up. I had friends who would move every so many years, and that was just my normal. So what was different for me, and the hardest part of growing up, was coming back to the Netherlands, where I entered a group dynamic where everybody had grown up together.
Everybody's the kind of the same background, same life experience.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly. So they had all gone to school throughout. They all went to the same sports club, the same hockey club, the same tennis club, and they all en masse moved to the same high school. So that was, I think, the first time that I realized that I gave myself a bit of an outsider identity. And let me say I gave that to myself because I think people were actually very welcoming when I came back, but I felt very different.
Yes.
And
you wanted to give yourself an outsider identity. You didn't want to be the same.
Yes, very much. Very much. I think I really sort of pushed a little bit against being part of that crowd. Later, years later, I understood that maybe my sexuality had also something to do with that I felt a little bit different.
Did you intuitively know that you were different, or were you very aware of the fact that you're...
Did people make it clear to you?
Yeah.
Not so much. Again, I think people were rather welcoming. It's rather that I was struggling myself. And it was a difficult period in my life because my dad had been working with Shell. We were supposed to go to Africa, to Gabon. That would be our next posting. So that was
after
my expectation.
Wassenaar or instead of Wassenaar?
Instead of Wassenaar. So after coming back from Syria, we were supposed to move to Gabon. But at that time, we were staying a couple months in the Netherlands, and there was a major burglary in our house, and my parents lost everything of value.
Oh my God.
So wedding gifts and videos of sort of like the video recorder set, etc., with all of our home videos of us being children, etc. So there was a huge emotional impact of that. And then my mother said, I'm no longer going to Africa. I'm done. And my older sister was already she was already living in the Netherlands in an internat. So that changed my world. My dad then left Shell. So it was really a period of turbulence. And in that period, I came into this new world and I was clinging sort of onto Syria. I still wanted to be there. Mm-hmm. And it was such a shift in context. In Syria, we were
adventure seeking every week when we were in the mountains. But also we were in a school of 60 people in total. I was in a class of group 5, 6, 7, and 8. Together, 12 people. At some point, I was by myself in group 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm. So you felt a strong sense of belonging in Syria?
Yes.
With different people, and then coming back to the Netherlands, you felt, where have I, who am I?
Where do I belong?
Where do I belong? Who am I if I have to relate to these people?
Exactly.
Yeah. In your report, your origin story comes out as to be the outsider identity.
And I recognize that.
You resonated, because the outsider identity is known for somebody who is not part of the in-group. And for some reason, well, in your case, listening to your story, not necessarily that the group told you that you were an outsider, but you felt something that made you not fit or totally belong to the group.
Yeah.
And looking at the framework, this means that you developed a strong inner compass and a strong change agency. Does that resonate with you?
It does.
Yes?
Yeah.
Where did that show up maybe later in life?
Well, one of the things that came out of the assessment is that this outsider personality has a strong sense of justice and strong sense of fairness. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is a really important thing. Being an outsider, both being gay or being a lesbian, but also having grown up in a mixed context, I feel strongly about inclusion and equal opportunity. So I guess I'm slightly more engaged than the average person with, LGBT issues, but also political issues.
Yeah.
Was it also already there from the beginning of your career?
Because looking at your career, you started out in a totally different environment than where you are today. You built Carbon Equity, which is really a company that showcases your drive for justice and fairness. But can you tell us a little bit about how that developed through your years as a professional, onto an entrepreneur, etc.?
Sure. Well, you might actually even say, not exactly, but it is in a way a bit full circle, even if it's only been 15 years. I'm still relatively young.
I also wanted to say, what age are you,
I hope you didn't max out life already.
I hope so too. No. But I started as an entrepreneur, as a student entrepreneur, founded De Kleine Consultant, now the Netherlands' largest student-run strategy consultant.
I was part of the Young Advisory Group, competitors, Kleine Consultant.
Really full circle. In the Kleine
Consultant, I fell in love with entrepreneurship for the first time. And it was a mission-driven company in the sense that it was our drive to make small consultants, but also our clients big. And we worked for nonprofits, for a Syrian refugee who was building his food stall. But we also worked for a international space agency. So like all kinds of clients. But the clients that I was most enthusiastic about were the small entrepreneurs, NGOs, nonprofits who could benefit from a McKinsey, but did not have the resources to afford them. And then we deployed teams of students. Now there's an office in every university town in the Netherlands. And they would give free or affordable strategic advice. But then after that, I started my first real job, and I quite accidentally landed in private equity at Hall Investments. And Hall is basically a 10 or 12 billion fund.
Was there any purpose driven? Because I'm hearing strong change agency.
Yeah.
But was there any purpose driven energy behind your step to Hall Investments?
No. No.
Not at all. How did that make you feel? What did you learn from that experience?
Well, I grew up with, as I mentioned, a dad who was an engineer and my mother was a lawyer, and they are not exactly entrepreneurial. So I grew up very adventure-seeking, but also with the idea of you should first have a job in a serious company, and then you'll figure it out afterwards. But start in a more structured way.
Something safe, something known.
Exactly.
A bit corporate, make your money, make your mark.
Yeah, because I did have the opportunity to start a company straight out of university. I spoke with the company called Night Balance, who were then looking for a co-founder, Eline van Beest.
Yeah.
Might be a cool person for the podcast as well.
Okay.
But I did not dare to do so at that point. I really felt, okay, I should start in a McKinsey or something. I want to become a strategy consultant. So in university college, I went to university college thinking I want to join the United Nations. I want to go into international politics, perhaps diplomacy, and very much with that change agency kind of, I want to make the world a better place. That was my starting point. But in university college, I realized that maybe you could have far more impact in the private world, in the private sector, rather than being part of a very bureaucratic, gigantic, non-profit organization.
Okay.
So I sort of pivoted from I should be in a nonprofit to I should be in business. And then strategy consulting was just the highest possible thing to achieve.
This sounds very rational to me.
It was quite rational.
And I think you did this research on Jacqueline Pim, that she said at a certain point you discovered that your gut is your brain.
Your brain is in your belly.
Your brain is in your belly.
It's true, it's here.
Yeah. And this is this intuition that we figured out that has played a very important role in switching from, this more rational way of building your career and literally saying, maybe it's smarter to do, to make this step because then I can make more impact.
Yeah.
But what did you mean with your brain is in your belly? When did that...
Well, so I think my life has been a bit of a tug of war between rational thinking and following my intuition and my passion. And you see that in several moments in my career. So I started off in private equity, learned a lot about investing, but always had a dream. Yep. So I always had this feeling of I'm on the wrong side of the table. I want to be an entrepreneur. I envied entrepreneurs or admired them. And at some point changed my password to Startup 2013. So I would remind myself of that dream every single day. And I think that's where I started following my intuition. But it was quite scary to make that step. And
what scared you?
Well, letting go of the safe path. You know that if you're in a strategy consultant or in a private equity fund, the majority of my colleagues, all of them, would just, they entered after university and they would exit when they were retiring. Mm-hmm. That was the kind of company that Hall was. You would just sort of grow through the ranks. And so I really departed from that path. But the moment, I started expressing my dream. I told everybody who I met. And then somebody said, well, talk to Rocket Internet. And these were these German brothers who were copy-pasting successful e-commerce businesses from the US to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And they offered me to go to the Philippines to go build a company. And once I was in the Philippines, it felt right? It felt like the sort of the eagle had landed in a way. I sort of like had,
Yes.
It was a homecoming.
Yeah.
And then I felt, now I'm in my position of strength because as an investor, I can do the job, but I'm never going to be the very best version of myself. But as an entrepreneur and as a company building or as an adventurer, like the three of us in Manila building a company from scratch, I really thrived. And I think that was the first time I really felt, sort of followed my intuition in my career.
Okay. And was that the breakthrough for you, following your intuition?
Not yet, because that cycle continued several times.
Yeah.
So
What cycle? The
rational
dilemma between rational and intuition.
Correct, exactly. So it happened a distinct second time when I was I built Lamudi, this online real estate platform, to 100 people in 3 years. Left, became CEO of a big fintech company, and then I, out of the blue, got a phone call from a VC fund called Peak Capital, and
Located in the Netherlands, right?
Located in the Netherlands, correct. And I had once pitched the company to them, and they had been impressed and sort of remembered me, and I had remembered them. And so they were looking for a partner, and then asked me to come back to the Netherlands. And out of the blue, I got this partner position. But I knew intuitively, emotionally, that this was not my dream. A lot of people were telling me this is the right thing to do because you've been in the Philippines for almost 6 years. It'll be harder the longer you stay to get back. And you've been an investor. My friend said, well, my now co-founder said, well, I think you'll like it because you've been an investor and you like startups, etc. And so here's like the best of both worlds.
So on paper, it was the perfect match.
On paper, it was a perfect match for them as well as for me. But it was a very rational decision. And in fact, I think that was very much guided by my fear of really starting a company for myself. Yeah. So I took a bit of the safe road, again, a bit of the rational road.
This is the pattern that you see in your life.
Yes.
So between your rationale, always guided by this, I want to make impact, but also your inner compass. Do I follow what I know to be true and to be right?
Yes.
Even maybe without the data.
Exactly. And I think the rational side comes a little bit also from my personal context and growing up and the way my parents and but also people who said, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah. But looking at the breakthrough, so you as a leader, because this is you're sharing a lot about how you developed personally as a leader, and I think trusting more on that this exclusion intelligence, which is your identity advantage, looking at your report, because this is what an outsider sees very well, right? So what is unjust in the system, but not only saying, hey, this is injustice, but I also know how to solve it.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point figuring out, but I need to lead people with me along the way to actually make the impact. It's not only about you.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere in your journey that you learned to take people on the way to your dream?
I think that's been something I've quite intuitively done from the start.
Yes.
Because I think I know myself relatively well.
Yes.
And one thing I know about myself is that I'm not particularly competent in many things.
It's a
good self-reflection there.
It's a very important reflection to know as a leader. What am I not good at?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are
Which
few
is, for
things
example?
I'm good at. Well, okay. I'm good at storytelling, getting people enthusiastic. I've had the privilege of hiring hundreds, if not over 1,000 people. And really knowing what good looks like. And I have a strong strategic intuition as to where I want to steer the company. And everything else I suck at. That would include people management, operational planning, coming on time.
How do you mitigate
being
that?
Organized.
How do you mitigate that? Are you really good at spotting what other people's are great at so that you can add it to your dream?
Exactly that. So my very first company, The Kleine Consultant, I had a dream, literally. It's the whole idea for The Kleine Consultant fell from the sky, I wrote it down. And the very next day, I met a friend, or rather an acquaintance, and we were talking about consulting and what to do after Isaac. We'd both been Isaac members. And then I said, well, why don't you become a co-founder of The Kleine Consultant? What's The Kleine Consultant? Oh, I thought of this idea yesterday.
Yeah.
But then like a month later, I'd moved on to the next grand idea. And Marieke came back to me and said, Jacqueline, are we doing The Kleine Consultant or not? And I was like, oh yeah, that's what we were doing. Okay, let's do it. And then we actually started like, I don't know, putting up posters and hiring Kleine Consultants. And that was a start. But without her, it wouldn't have happened. And that was the first time I realized to get out of my idea cycle, where I have an idea, I see the light,
Yep.
and then I see lots of objections and think like, oh no, I guess it's not a good idea. And then I have another great idea.
Yeah, so
sort of like this cycle where you're just ideating but not doing anything. The only way to break out of it is to do it together.
Yeah.
And so I learned quite early on that finding people who are complementary to me is really the way for me to be successful.
And is that only for you looking at skill set? Because we're talking about intuition a lot. When you are seeking somebody to add to your team, or even if you want to grow people, is that based on skills? Do you use your intuition? Are you also very keen on understanding what other people's lived experiences and what kind of strengths they are bringing? How does that work?
I think the most important thing in hiring people is that they're authentic. So there's no chip on their shoulder. They know who they are. They know their strengths and weaknesses, and they have nothing to prove.
Yeah.
And for
have you
me,
seen that as a pattern in the talent that you have in your company?
Yes, there are no egos. Or sure, there are egos, but there are no big egos that dominate within the company.
But how do you test for that authenticity?
By really understanding indeed where somebody came from, what has shaped them, what are they good at, what are they not good at, what gives them energy, what doesn't give them energy. So I look for two things. I think I look for a match of energy, drive, and a bit of skill set, but it's less important than the other things. Energy for me is the most important thing. Like what makes your eyes sparkle, right?
Yeah.
Like what makes you light up as a person. That should match with the core of your job. And secondly, we look for values alignments. So what are your values and do they align with our company culture? Those are the things that we look for. But I think in somebody who has experienced quite a lot of things, knows themselves, has experienced setbacks, which are extremely instrumental in shaping your self-identity and your understanding of yourself, are super important in forming yourself as a fully formed, authentic self.
Understanding also
people.
your blind spots.
Yeah.
And the tension that there might be between your drive and your talent. Again, looking back at your report, your identity advantage is exclusion intelligence, but you develop as a reader, as a leader. You also stated in the prep of this talk that you've also grown into developing transcultural intelligence. So you said you really also resonated with the archetype visionary translator. Can you share a little bit more about why that is also part of the skill set that you've developed?
Well, I think what I meant with the fact that I resonate with that is that I like being in multiple worlds at the same time. And carbon equity is a very balancing act between being with one world in the quite hardcore finance private equity world, and on the other hand, in the world of environmental and climate impact.
For the listeners, can you share a little bit? What does carbon equty do? Why is
this? So we are going to talk about carbon equity.
Yeah, yes, we're going to talk about, because I'm hearing now that carbon equity is really the transition of only wanting to make impact on yourself, but now bringing worlds together to actually make the impact, right?
Yeah, I mean, impact and sort of building things in the sense of change agency has been part of my life throughout.
Yeah.
But carbon equity is a good translation of it, or a good manifestation of it. What we do at Carbon Equity is we make it possible for people to make good money. And good money means good financial returns as a result of solving the world's biggest challenges with a focus on energy transition and climate.
Okay.
And then if you take a more technical explanation, we make it possible for people to invest from relatively low amounts, 20K, 10K. In the world,
I just wanted to ask, can I also invest? But
yeah,
it's a bit higher entry.
Yeah,
money.
But even from 10K, the first outlay is 10K.
Okay, 10K.
In the world's best climate and energy transition venture capital funds, private equity funds, infra funds, private credit funds. So really investing in innovation and infrastructure that will help the world make a better place.
Yep.
But also makes total sense from an economic point of view, as we're transitioning from a fossil economy to.
And then connecting that to your culture, how do you get talent excited about working for carbon equity and wanting to be the best versions of themselves in your organization?
Well, I think a lot of people work with us because they resonate with this idea of like, okay, I can work in a top tier, in a Champions League finance company for a better world. So there's something more. And quite explicitly, a couple of people on our team come from Alpinvest, and that's the world's biggest, sort of the FC Barcelona of investing.
Not really into football, but as FC Barcelona, I do know.
I figured. Yeah. Not the Ajax. But and they had or made millions, and the prospect of making tens of millions. And then at some point they said, well, now I've seen what it is to make a lot of money. But is there more to life? And I want to do something with my skill set that has more purpose. And so we have people from Google and Adyen and Alpinvest and McKinsey and very talented skill sets, but who all seek to do so with more purpose for a better planet.
Yeah. So and they all really know truly who they are.
Yes, I think so.
I'm curious now, as carbon equity is growing, and you're saying feeling the matching energy is such an important thing for hiring talent. How do you? Are you still involved in hiring talent, or how do you make sure that other people have that same intuition as you have?
Yeah. Yes, I'm still involved. And I think that's really important. In exceptional cases, I will not be involved for a junior hire, but I think I should still be involved for vast majority of hires. We have come up with a strong framework on hiring where cultural fit is a super important thing. And so we've defined 5 cultural values at Carbon Equity. The first is, yes, we can solve climate change, which is really about, do you resonate with that mission?
With the mission, yeah.
But also we take our work seriously, but not ourselves. And that actually is very much about, are you an authentic self?
Yeah.
Or do you have room for other people? Can you laugh about yourself?
Exactly.
Can you make fun about yourself? So it's about working hard, but also really being a great team player. And I think that's where sort of identity awareness or maturity plays a really important role.
Because would you say that you say hire for culture fit.
Yeah.
But would you say that that a part of being a culture fit is that you hire for difference?
Well, I think difference is something that we look for, and we look for people who bring something special. So something that also elevates what we have. And I think we have quite a diverse team from a gender perspective, from a sexual orientation perspective, not from a color perspective, and also also a little bit from a socioeconomic perspective.
Yeah, because the last one I would say is also something that people often forget, that it's not really the identity traits, but it's the lived experience.
Yes, very
that
much.
matters, right?
Exactly.
Not only visually.
Not only visually,
absolutely,
indeed.
Exactly. So I think what our values hiring allows us to do is to filter out more of the personal biases that people have and really optimize for, do we have the same values? And I think that's a big predictor for success, and particularly mission fit is a major predictor for longevity, because when people really resonate with the mission, then they tend to stick around for a very long time.
Yeah. And how do you because if you're aligned on values, but you have confrontation or a different perspective, it makes it a lot easier to say, okay, let's use this friction as a signal that we can get something out of it. Is that something that you also believe in at Carbon Equity, that healthy conflict is important?
Yes, very much. Yeah, where it's something that we also need to learn still.
Yeah.
But having courageous conversations. Last year we did a training on radical candor.
What does that mean?
Radical candor is just being radically honest and saying everything.
Okay.
Instead of
everything.
Everything. Yes, really saying what you mean.
Okay. And do you make sure that you have the safety in the organization that everybody feels that it is safe enough to say what they think. Because for some people, like the boss, the founder, you can be super vulnerable. You can say everything.
You can always knock on my door.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what all the CEOs say.
Yeah, but if you're the junior hire without the finance experience and maybe with a different socio-economic background, also a culture that maybe not always encourages speaking to the boss in a certain way. Is that something that you cultivate in your organization, that everybody feels that, psychological safety?
Yeah, that's a super important precondition, because without real psychological safety, you cannot have a culture of radical honesty.
Mm-hmm.
I think and I learned that, I'm not sure if you wanted to speak about that at a later on, but I once learned painfully what psychological safety is.
Yes.
It was
literally, right?
Yes.
You didn't know what it meant, the word.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
In the Philippines, I took over a company called True Money as a CEO. And it was really a turnaround case. The previous CEO had been fired or demoted. He actually stayed in the team, which was not a great idea.
Okay.
But it was my job to turn around the company. It started with turning around the management team and having a look at who here on the management team really understands their craft and who's in the wrong position or wrong company. And I started then also ultimately, first started coaching people and ultimately also firing a couple of people. And but what I forgot to do, or I was insufficiently aware of, was that I first really needed to build trust at a personal level. And I think building trust at a personal level is really, yes, and it's as simple as, I'm gonna have a coffee with you, or we're gonna go for a beer, or we're gonna have experience, we're gonna go for an offsite and get to know each other as people, and going through people's lifeline to understand what formed their identity and what shapes their views, etc.
Just having this conversation about your origin story, as we have learned, is like a fast forward in creating that trust.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Because it levels the playing field, right?
Yeah, and it helps, and it gives you a lot more empathy for, now I understand where you're coming from.
Exactly.
So it's super critical, but I skipped that step. And so basically the experience of my management team was a new CEO coming in, upping the pressure, firing people, creating a culture of fear of, if I'm not on her side, I might get fired. Mm-hmm. And so at some point, the global HR team, because I was leading a country in a bigger global group, they said, Jackie, we're coming over to the Philippines. We're going to do an intervention because it turns out that your score for psychological safety is very low. I was like, what is psychological safety? I really had no idea. And then I read the book of Brene Brown, which was a complete game changer, the most important book I've read in as a leader, which taught me about the art of vulnerability and the importance of psychological safety in creating the preconditions for a healthy, functioning company culture in which people feel free to be honest and can exhibit radical candor.
And the interesting thing is that there are some people, because of their origin story, have a natural talent for creating psychological safety.
Yes.
So if you're looking at people with inclusion intelligence as their identity advantage because they started out as an unseen identity, if you get these people on board in a team, they are the ones that
would have told you, or maybe this was the HR person, hey, true, looking at the numbers, but also maybe in the team.
Yeah.
And if you give them the space to speak up, they can help you as a leader to learn the habits that are needed to continuously have these environments and spaces where people dare to speak up.
Yeah, that's an important insight, because it means then that it is also really important to have people with such inclusion intelligence on your team to at least have the sensitivity or awareness, which I myself did not have, in ensuring that people are heard, that different perspectives come to the table.
What would your advice be to somebody who is now a CEO walking into an organization, needing to turn around fast and maybe also have this assignment to replace people? What would your one advice be?
Well, start by building trust at a personal level.
And what does that look like for you?
Getting to know people.
Yeah.
Getting to know people really at a personal level. Being vulnerable and sharing your own story and your own strengths and weaknesses.
How do you do that at Carbon Equity? Being vulnerable?
Oh, well, for example, one of the things I do when I have a new hire is we go for a walk and I tell them about all of the things I suck at. and and I also ask them to tell me what I should know about them, and getting to know each other at that more personal level. And somebody actually seeing like, okay, here's somebody who, is pretty vulnerable, means I also don't need to prove myself. It's totally fine that I'm not great at everything.
Last question, because in every episode we ask our guest, what would you want to learn from the next exceptional leader that we will be interviewing? And in the next episode, we'll be speaking to Matthias Scheek. And we would like to know, what would you like to learn from Matthias?
Yeah, Matthias is a great entrepreneur and inventor.
Inventor, yes.
And I met him a few months ago, and we were talking about what will you do next. And he said he would now like to address the trash problem in Amsterdam, which I thought was really funny because I too would love to address the trash problem. I can imagine myself as the next job, like being the CEO of the Amsterdam Municipal Waste Service. I would love that.
Is that the one other thing that you'd like to change in the world?
Possibly one of the many things. One of the many things. But I'm very curious how his identity has turned him into a problem solver and how he finds unique and very special, very niche problems that he can solve given his background.
So the question to Matthias is, how do you use your unique identity to solve unique problems?
Correct.
And
that's very well phrased.
Can we work together in the future to solve the Amsterdam trash problem?
Matthias, let's do this.
Let's do this. Collaboration, exceptionals.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jacqueline. Thank you for listening to Exceptionals, the podcast. Produced in partnership with Site of Media and Stamped Studios. If you want to learn more about identity intelligence and do the assessment yourself, go to weareexceptionals.com. Thank you for being exceptional.